Hi, my name is Tony with the Red Power Team. Today we're going to be covering on an FD1 series MacDon draper head the float and wing balance. So those are two separate things. We're going to cover that and show you exactly how to do float and wing balance on an FD1 series MacDon head. With your operator's manual, which will be in the end of your head, you should have inside of there with the books a reference card. And so we're going to be walking through this reference card today, so everything I'm covering is on this reference card also. As we get our head set up today, a couple of things we want to do. First, we want to make sure that this float module is level. So I've got a level indicator here, and we're going to put that up here on the float module. And we want to make sure that we are level. So if you don't have a dial indicator, just grab a level, put on here to make sure that this is level. The next thing we want to do, we have that level. Up in the center of our head, we have a ABCD. That's the tilt angle that our head is sitting at. So we want to make sure that we are in the B.5 position for our head angle. As we come across, we want to make sure our reel is in the number 6 position. So as you're looking from the cab and you're sliding this reel forward, you're going to look in between here, and when you see number 6, that's the position we want our reel at, and we want our reel all the way down also at the same time. As we come around to the front side of the head, we want to make sure that our cutter bar is roughly 6 to 10 inches off the ground as well. So back on the back side of the head, we're going to be working on float balance first. So there's float balance and there's wing. We need to make sure we always do float first. So when we start this out, we want to make sure that our wings are in the lock position. So on both sides of the head, we've got our lever here where our wing is locked and unlocked. So I want to make sure that my wing is in the lock position. I'm going to go ahead and take this cover off so we can verify that it is in the lock position. I'm just going to grab a wrench, and I've already got this loose. So I'm going to take my bolt off to pull this cover out of the way, and I'm going to screw the bolt back in so I don't lose it. And we can see out here on the end that our lock is in the upright position. If I move this down, our lock slides down, and if I flip it back up, it's actually up and the wing is locked at this point. So we need to grab our torque wrench off the back of the head. So to do that, we have to press over to unlatch it. Then it's going to fall back and we can take it out. Once we have this torque wrench out, we need to make sure it's zeroed out. So we've got this indicator in here. And once in a while this indicator can be off center and it won't be centered out. If it's off centered, you can just press it one way or the other and push on it and get kind of bent back so that it shows we're zeroed out. We want to make sure that we're going to get nice even readings off this as we get started here on the head. Okay, so we're going to start with our float balance, and in our quick reference guide, I'm on a FD140 series head, so I got a 40-foot draper. That means I need my cutting indicator to be between 2 and 2.5 is where we're going to run with this. So we're going to check out and see what our float is on the head. So in order to do that, we need to unlock our float on the side of the head here. So I've got it in the unlock position. I'm going to go ahead and put my torque wrench on, and as I'm pushing down, I'm going to want to see what this is reading. Don't stop and then read it. You need to watch it as you're pushing down. So as I push down and I see what we're reading here, we're up around 3 is where we're sitting at, and by our diagram it said we wanted to be 2 to 2.5. So our head's a little heavy on this side. I'm just going to push down and check it one more time just to look once more at it, and we're up around that 3. So we need to lighten the head up a little bit, and we need to make adjustments up here at this time to our springs. We first need to unlock our bolt locks on the top here. So I've got my 15 mil wrench, and all we're going to do is just loosen these up so we can spin it and turn our lock off to the side. So I've got those off to the side, and our head's a little heavy, but before we make any adjustments, I'm going to grab a tape measure, and I want to see what the distance is between this top casting and this metal plate to make sure that both these springs are identical, so as we make adjustments it's equal on both of these. So as I put a tape on here and I read across, we're at 5 3/8. I come over to my next spring and I read across, and we're at 6 inches. So our springs are not set the same. We need to get them both set the same first before we make any other adjustments. So since our head is heavy, we're going to suck this spring up to 5 3/8 to match this one. And once I get that brought up to 5 3/8, then we'll recheck our float balance on this side and see where we're at. So let's go ahead and make this adjustment now. So I'm going to turn it clockwise. We're going to see how far one turn just brought us. We're at 5 7/8, so we need to make a couple of turns to get down to that 5 3/8. Getting closer to about 5 1/2. See if it's 5 and just a little bit more. Let's see what that comes to. Up a little more. There. So we just checked now, we're about 5 3/8. And back on this one again, we're at 5 3/8. So now that we have both of these lined up the same, I want to make sure that our locks can go back over. And once they do, I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to make a mark, just so that as we're making adjustments, we're making equal adjustments to both of these springs. This one we got to spin it just a little bit to get it to fall in. Make a mark there and a mark there. So both springs are now set equal, and now let's check our float balance before we make any other adjustments, see where we're at. We're going to come back over to the side again. And then as we push down, we're probably about 2.5. Let's recheck it again. As I'm pushing down, we get up to 2.5, right between the 2 and the 3. And by our diagram, we want to be between that 2 and 2.5. So if we're right at 2.5, we'll go ahead and we'll check the other side also. Now that we have that float set at 2.5, I'm just going to come out to that same corner of the head, and we want this to roughly be around, take 70 to 80 pounds to lift. So kind of a good rule of thumb that I like to use is, by one hand, it's going to be a struggle to lift. If you put 2 hands on there, you should be able to lift that up. And since it lifts up nicely, we're going to want to make sure the other end of the head does the same thing after we get float set on that side. So we've just moved to the left hand side of the head to get our float set over here. So the first thing I want to do is unlock my float on the left hand side. So I've got that unlocked. And then you'll notice when we bring our torque wrench up here, we're going to find that our PTO shaft is in the way. So I need to go ahead and disconnect our PTO shaft to get it out of the way in order to get this side set. So we've got our PTO shaft now off to the side. Now we can go ahead and get our torque wrench put on. We've got it on, and again, as I push down, I want to read what it's showing. And we're close to 3. On the other side, you saw that we were at 2.5 where we ended up getting it set at. Let me just double check it again. So again, we're still a little heavy on this side. The next thing we're going to do is we want to double check those spring distances before we make any other adjustments. So we're going to get our 15 mil wrench out, loosen these up, get them slid off to the side. So we're rechecking here, and we're sitting at 5 3/8, and I go back to this one, and we've got that adjusted to the same at 5 3/8 also. I'm going to first make sure that our locks line back up top again, and then make our black marks on them. Just a little bit more. I'm going to put my black mark on here so that we know that both of these are set at the same point. And before we make any other adjustments, let's go down and recheck our float balance again. So we've got our wrench on now. We're going to push down. And we're right about 2.5, just like we were on the other side at this point. And let's see if we can lift it again at that 70-80 pounds on this corner. We just set the float balance on the left-hand side of the head at 2.5 when I was pushing down on there. So we should be able to come out here on the end and lift up. And you'll notice it takes significantly more power to lift this side than the right side of the head. So a little red power tip for you guys is we're going to come back to the back of the head. And once we've got everything set with this bar, on the left hand side it's going to feel heavier. And what we like to do is on our 2 bolts up top, we had the black marks on here on our starting point. And we're going to suck this spring up, so we're going to spin both these bolts in 2.5 turns. And if you spin it 2.5 full turns, now our little black mark's pointing up. Check out on your wing ends, lift up on both ends, and see if they lift about the same. So we found that after we've drawn these in 2.5 more turns, that the left side of the head lightens up a little bit more, and it makes it more equal to the right hand side of the head. So once we've got that completed, we've completed the float part on this draper head. And don't forget to relock your floats on your head once we've got that done. Our next step is we're going to work on wing balance now that we've got the float portion set. I'm going to first make sure my wing is in the lock position, and we can see that our bar is up and it's locked. I want to come over here, and with our white indicator we want to make sure that that's running parallel with our arm on the inside. So once in a while, you know, someone could have stepped on this and it's off, it's not running parallel with this bar. So we're going to just bend this up so it's running on the same parallel reference as our bar on the inside. So we're sitting pretty parallel there, so it's a good reference for us to judge off of now for our next step. Okay, we're going to do our wing balance. So first I'm going to unlock the wing. Once I've got the wing unlocked, we just stuck our tool up here, and the bolt head's on the inside in order to put our tool on. And we're going to push this up until this bottom indicator is level with here, and then we're going to pull it down when the top of this is level with down here. And at the same time, we want to get our reading off of what we've got going on. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to push up until this is roughly level, and at the same time now we look up and we're right around 3 on our indicator. We pull down, and when this gets level on the way down, we look up and we're right around 2.5 on our indicator. So if we look at our quick reference guide that we've got, in our quick reference guide it has in there that as long as we're within 1/2 both ways, our wing is balanced. And kind of a little tip, we had 3 on the upside, which is what we want. We want it to be a little bit heavier on that lift. That way when you go over the crown on a hilltop, that wing's got enough weight to go down and over the curve of the hilltop. So having that 3 on the upside, 2.5 on the downside is right where we kind of want to have this head set. Now we're on the left hand side of the head. We want to check our wing float on this left hand side. So we've got our arm parallel. We want to go ahead and push up on our linkage, and once this becomes level, we're looking up and we're around that 3 on the up. We're going to pull down, and once this top side gets level on the down, we're about 2.5 on the down at this point. So we're within that half, and you know, we're a little bit heavier on the upside, the same as the other side. If we had to make adjustments, I made some notes on here to help out with understanding this a little bit better. So the first thing I've got up here is I wrote on here, you can see the arrow pushing up. If our wing is too heavy, then we got to move our clevis to the left. And as you come down, if our wing is too light, we need to move our clevis to the right. So I wrote that down here. So in order to make this clevis adjustment, you're going to loosen this nut, you're going to loosen this nut, and then depending on which way we need our clevis to go, so if we were too light, our clevis needs to move to the right to make it heavier. So you're going to spin this knob so that we can move our clevis inboard to make the head heavier. On the flip side, if when we were raising that head, if it was too heavy, that clevis has got to move out. So we see the clevis has to move out to make it lighter. So, and that's all by adjusting this either way to move this clevis in or out. Once you've got it set, tighten back up this top nut and this inside jam nut as well. So we've just completed the wing balance at this point. We can go ahead and take our tool and we're going to put it back on the back side of the head and storage. So we hook the bottom, and we're going to be on the back side of this pin, and then up top we press it in and it locks in. And at this point we can go ahead and we can put our plastic covers back on, and that completes our wing balance on this FD1 series head.